大丈夫ですよ。ただこのセッション自体はもう今始めていいのかどうか、もう時間が過ぎているので、皆さん大丈夫ですか？
It's past the scheduled starting time, but please bear with us for a few more minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for waiting. We'd like to start the Parallel Session 1, launch of the Japan 2050 Low Carbon Navigator, navigating toward low carbon societies. Before starting the session, we'd like to ask Mr. Nobuhiro Kino, Director, Office of International Cooperation of Ministry of Environment, and Mr. Richard Oppenheim, First Secretary, Head of Climate Change and Energy Section, British Embassy. We'd like to have opening remarks from these two gentlemen, Mr. Kino and Mr. Oppenheim, please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the introduction. I am the Director of Office of International Cooperation of Ministry of Environment. My name is Kino. 2 weeks ago, I took this position. So together with those of you who are here in the audience, I'm looking forward to working going forward. And Dr. Kiso from UK has been invited today, and I'm very pleased to be able to introduce 2050 Low Carbon Navigator today. In this session, it has been positioned as the launch session of 2050 Low Carbon Navigator. And this 2050 Low Carbon Navigator has been built by adding Japanese socio-economic data and energy-consuming devices technological information to 2050 Pathways calculator developed by UK Department of Energy and Climate Change. In the development, the Asia-Pacific Integrated Model, or AIM model, was used, and NEES, which provided expertise to IPCC and development of domestic mid to long-term roadmap on global warming, and IGES, who organized Low Carbon Society International Network and played a bridging role between science and policies, have co-developed the Navigator. And 2050 Low Carbon Navigator, in this tool, by choosing reduction effort level for each main factor determining supply and demand of energy, we can show scenarios on energy's supply-demand structure for the years till 2050. We can also see the impact on emission volumes, energy security, land use, power systems, energy resource development, and costs. And in the exhibition booth installed in this venue today, you can have the opportunity to play with this 2050 Low Carbon Navigator. So I hope you can drop by at the exhibition booth to take this opportunity. And in the UK, because of easiness to operate and graphical representation in developing GHG emission targets, It was used in explaining to policymakers and politicians, and also to deepen the understanding and also to raise awareness among citizens. And in Japan, we are hoping that a lot of stakeholders, including citizens, can use this navigator so that it will lead to spreading of discussions on low carbon society and help deepen the understanding among citizens. In May this year, Prime Minister Abe visited UK, and there was a UK-Japan joint statement on climate change and energy cooperation that was announced, and it referred to the increasing of the scope for further cooperation and information exchange on the development of 2050 Pathways Calculator. And it is quite pleasing that this has been referenced in terms of promoting cooperation between UK and Japan. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank Department of Energy and Climate Change and British Embassy for providing us support in developing this navigator. And that concludes my opening remarks. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great honor for me to be here and take part in the launch of the Japan 2050 Low Carbon Navigator. I'm Richard Oppenheim. I'm head of the Climate Change and Energy team at the British Embassy in Tokyo. The UK government and our embassy in Tokyo have been supporting the Japan 2050 calculator team for over a year. So it's particularly pleasing for us to see the Japanese version of the 2050 calculator finally being launched today. In May 2013, Jan Olekiso from the Department of Energy and Climate Change's 2050 team, who is also here with us today and who will speak later, visited Japan and led a week-long workshop for the core Japanese team building the Japan calculator. Since then, they have been working very hard to develop the tool, and in September last year, they visited the UK for further technical training. This year, they've held a number of expert-level meetings to discuss the calculator and the data behind it with a wide range of Japanese officials, researchers, non-governmental organizations, and academics. We organized a pre-launch event and workshop at our embassy in May this year, with about 70 people attending from, again, various backgrounds and various stakeholders. As Director Kino just mentioned, Prime Minister Abe visited the UK in May this year. And during the visit, our Secretary of State for Energy and Climate Change, Ed Davey, had the opportunity to introduce the UK's 2050 calculator to Prime Minister Abe, and of course to mention the development of the Japan calculator. When the Secretary of State did so, he also noted that the UK and Japan both recognise the importance of investing in a diverse and clean energy mix in order to ensure a competitive economy, long-term security of supply, and to avoid dangerous climate change. He said that our partnerships with Japan are hugely valuable, and we are pleased to continue to work together to secure a global climate change deal in 2015 and support the global transition to a low-carbon economy. He mentioned that the 2008 UK Climate Change Act brought in a legally binding commitment for the UK to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 80% in 2050 compared with 1990 levels, and that DEC have developed the 2050 calculator to engage our society on how these targets can be achieved. That we use the 2050 calculator to communicate this complex issue to our stakeholders and to explore the trade-offs between different technology options. And because it's available online, they can try it out themselves too. We hope that this improves understanding and confidence about our long-term strategy. And finally, he noted that he was pleased that his department, the Department for Energy and Climate Change, were working with Japanese colleagues to develop a Japanese version of this tool, which he hoped would be useful would be as useful for Japanese society as it has been for the UK. I couldn't have said it better myself. We have learned since the Prime Minister Abe's visit that he showed a clear interest in the 2050 Pathways Calculator, and that he commented afterwards that he had particularly enjoyed the presentation. So that's a great platform from which to launch the Japan calculator, I think. I should also emphasize that this is the start of a journey. Now that you have a calculator, I look forward to seeing it used and discussed in Japan, and for it to continue to develop as more stakeholders learn about it, they learn how to use it, and they make suggestions for how to make it even better. For our part, we will continue to support the Japan team where we can to further develop and improve the calculator. And we hope the calculator will be used widely to generate energy literate discussion in future in Japan, as the 2050 calculator has in the UK. I should also say that we will be learning a lot for our own calculator from the Japan team's work, and we hope to bring that into our own calculator so we can continue to learn from each other in this important area. And we are very grateful to the Ministry of Environment and to the Japan calculator team for all their hard work in developing this. Thank you very much for listening.
日野様、オッペンハイム様、どうもありがとう。
Thank you very much, Mr. Kino and Mr. Oppenheim. The moderator for this session will be Mr. Hironori Hamanaka, the chair of the board of directors of IJES. So, Mr. Hamanaka, please take the floor.
皆様こん
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As has been mentioned by the two opening remarks, the IJES and NEES have co-developed 2050 Low Carbon Navigator, and this session is designed to unveil this navigator to you. And 2050 Pathways Calculator, that was the inspiration for the Low Carbon Navigator, will be also discussed, and the panel discussion, the experts from around the world will be talking about how to use this navigator and what expectation they have. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Shuzo Nishioka to talk about overview of a 2050 Low Carbon Navigator and the prospect for the future. I am Nishioka. As was mentioned, as you can see, the 2050 Low Carbon Navigator is the name of this tool, and let me give you the explanation, and more detailed explanation will be given by the researchers afterwards. And this says you can realize a low carbon society with a certain level, certain mix of energy. I'm sorry, the bottle of water has got tumbled down. And I talked about this morning, but according to IPCC, for the next 100 years, we have to go into zero emission society. This can be also called carbon neutral, but zero emission means zero emission of carbon. And what time is available for us to achieve this? As you can see, the capacity for the emission left is 275, so there's only 13 years of budget. So how we can be parsimonious in spending this budget and achieve this, and how are we going to be able to pull this off in Japan? And that's where the navigator comes in. And in 2050, ultimately, 2 tons per capita on the average globally is going to be the target. And if that's the target, then the result would be, as you can see, in 2050, we would have to reduce by more than 80% in Japan, and this is something that we cannot escape from. And 2 degrees or 3 degrees, there's a discussion on this, but if it's 3 degrees, then the yellow point would be the indication. And even with that, we have to reduce by 60% of CO2 emission. So how we can change energy mix and structure would be the key question. And there are various ways to do this. Economic structure, if that changes, what would happen? For example, the economic structure can change. Made in Japan on top. You produce everything in Japan and earn profits, or you can just provide R&D and energy or the knowledge intensive one, or we can just rely on brand equity as the Italy does. And so depending on which scenarios we take, the emission volume will change. And in this navigator, this macro, what we call macro frame changes, can be accommodated. But we cannot cover everything today. So what seems to be a beauty is the R&D, or we can earn out of our knowledge. And as you can see in R&D, you can have art manufacturing, and you can also become a headquarters. There are pros and cons, but you have to study very hard to achieve this. And the advantage is that you can lead the knowledge economy in the world. But if you bear this society in mind, are we going to be able to do this? That's what the question that we're asking. And as experts like you may know, the primary energy, whether it will be oil, natural gas, or coal, as you can see on the left, if you burn how much when you burn, how much when you produce one intensity CO2 intensity of energy, how much you will burn, 1, 2, or 3, and nuclear energy is 0. And why do we need this? On the right, as you can see, the use end, or the use consumption and households, or the transport and industries. So the second way of achieving this is to figure out how to minimize the consumption on the final usage end. And then in the middle, you see the energy use structure that can be changed as well. For example, vehicles can use electricity instead of gasoline to drive them. And then if you provide this as energy, how is it going to be changed? Or you can make the towns the low carbon cities or compact cities to reduce transport and make a town that is quite efficient in people living. And so energy use system can be changed. So there are 3 different approaches, and there are about 22 or 35 items in this navigator, and you can also decide how much effort you will put this into. You can increase natural gas and reduce coal. That could be one option, or you can make more efforts in energy saving. After the March 11th earthquake, we have reduced the power consumption by 20%, so why don't we do more? Or in the middle, the good ideas can be also applied in energy structure. So in any case, in this century, by the end of this century, we have to shift into low carbon society, and that is going to be a challenge. So how we can do this, and this can be demonstrated and confirmed by your own hands, and how much intensity will be given to different policies. That is the intensity of policies, and there are 4 or 5 different levels. So if you click any one of these, you'll get the result. And this is one to a first and second, third approach. And this is the last slide for me. And what is important is what kind of Japan would you like to have? And depending on that, things will be different. And challenges for Japan, energy security is one of them. How to address aging society, and are we going to ask for safe and stable society? So for different scenarios, how much CO2 can be reduced and what will be the energy mix? That is the result that this navigator will give you. And there'll be more detailed explanation. I think that will follow us. Thank you very much, Dr. Nishioka.
So next, we have Dr. Zhao Xin, a leader of the Principal Policy Researcher, Green Economy Area of IGES. Could you give us a demonstration of the Japan 2050 Low Carbon Navigator?
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the development team of the Low Carbon Navigator, I'm very excited to present to you today the Japan 2050 Low Carbon Navigator. I'm Shinjo, leading the development of work at IGES. So what we will present today is the Japanese version and the English version of the web tool, which is the kind of energy and emissions simulation tool for Japan up to 2050. And we should admit that this model is version 1, which is subject to continuous improvements as well as updates based on the evidence as well as advice to be received from the experts as well as feedbacks from the users. So what is the Japan 2050 Low Carbon Navigator? So it is the Japanese version of the UK 2050 Pathways Calculator developed by the UK Department of Energy and Climate Change, DEC, in 2010. And Mr. Yan Kiso from the UK 2050 Pathways Calculator team will give us a more detailed introduction about the UK 2050 calculators as well as the global calculator in the next presentation. So this low carbon navigator is a simulation model for the energy as well as associated emissions for Japan over the next 40 years. And it is an interactive, simple to communicate tool that can allow us to answer the fundamental questions of how far we can reduce the emissions and meet the energy needs for Japan. And also it allows to develop your own combination of the changes in different technologies as well as in the sectors up to 2050. So this tool is also allows us to outline in minutes the results of energy and emissions in a transparent and evidence-based way. So why have we developed it? So first, Japan is committed to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by 2050 in its approved 4th Environment Basic Plan. However, after the Fukushima accident in 2011, Japan is placed at the crossroad for deciding on its future energy structure, which can ensure the energy security as well as to achieve a more ambitious long-term mitigation target. So in addition, Japan will set the post-2020 national mitigation target for the international negotiations of the 2015 International Agreement under the UNFCCC. So for all of this, we believe that the low carbon navigator can be used as a handy tool for engaging domestic policy dialogues among various stakeholders and for a different purpose of education aiming at students and the general public. So how was low carbon navigator developed? As I mentioned, that this is developed jointly by the international team at EDGIS and NICE researchers during last year, since May of last year to now. And during the process, we received various support from Japanese experts, the UK DEC in particular, and the 2050 calculator team, as well as the British Embassy Tokyo and the Ministry of the Environment of Japan. And this tool is built on the UK 2050 calculator, but with some special Japanese ingredients. In particular, we have the Japanese specific data on the scenario setting, technology specifications, and social and economic indicators. And it is unique in the calculator family that we set 5 society scenarios for 2050 for Japan on the top of the sectoral choices, reflecting the future social and economic development. And for setting the levels of efforts made to mitigate emissions, we provide a wide range of selections ranging from no efforts to low, medium, and high efforts. And we also add an additional level 5 to the nuclear and renewable sectors, representing the physical limits as well as the technical potential. And in the way of treatment of energy oversupply compared with the demand levels, actually, it's a little bit different from the UK model. We try to match the energy supply with the demand, and also using the import of fossil fuels as well as the amount of electricity generation from the conventional power plants. But in the UK version, they allow big amounts of oversupply, as well as using the imported electricity as a kind of way to satisfy the energy deficiency. So the key questions that can be addressed by the low carbon navigator include such as how much energy can we supply from different energy technologies, how much energy do different sectors use, and how can we change this? And which sectors are the one we should focus on and which are less important in terms of to secure the energy supply as well as to mitigate emissions? And what could happen to our energy dependency and security? And in particular for Japan, without nuclear, what will be the energy mix for Japan to achieve the 80% emissions target by 2050? And how much CO2 emissions can be achieved using the most ambitious renewable energy scenarios, and at what cost? What is the full potential of CO2 reductions in Japan, and at what cost? And what does the pathway look like? So having said all about the low carbon navigator, so what does the low carbon navigator look like? So we have 2 versions, the Excel version as well as the web tool. Now you can access to the different versions of the model by using the website, the links. These tools can be downloadable for free. And for more details, we also have this user's guide, which is distributed at the display section. And also, one of our staff is there to answer your questions and to show you how to operate the model at the display section. So how does this navigator work? So the users first to select their sectoral choices. If you use the web tool, actually here you have the places that you can select over the 4 sectoral choices. For example, for the passenger transport behavior, you can select among whether you travel more than the level of today, or whether you travel by your own car or by the public transportation means, such as bus or the rail. Then, based upon your choice, the model calculates the sectoral outputs, and these sectoral outputs will be compiled in the energy balance table for each year from 2010 to 2050. Then the data in the energy balance table will be summarized in the intermediate output sheet, based on which the results can be presented in minutes. In terms of, for example, energy supply and total energy demand for final consumption, and the electricity generation and energy mix, as well as the emissions levels compared with 1990 levels, and the related costs to your choice. And the model covers all major sectors of energy supply and demand. So as I mentioned, at the top of the sectoral choice, we provide 5 society scenarios which will impact on the future projections of the economic growth, the economic activity levels, as well as the size of population. And the economic changes will then link with the sectors of industry, the commercial, as well as freight transport. And the population size will also link with the residential sector and the passenger transport sector. So for the energy demand side, we have 4 aggregate sectors of industry: residential, commercial, and transport. And for energy supply, we cover both primary energy as well as secondary energy. For primary energy, we considered both imports of energy sources as well as domestic energy resources, covering the coal, crude oil, natural gas, the nuclear, renewables, and biomass. And also for the secondary energy, we considered electricity as well as other secondary sources such as hydrogen production for transport as well as biofuels. So the low carbon navigator sets out 4 or 5, in particular for renewable energy and nuclear power sectors, the trajectories reflecting the whole range of potential future scenarios. From level 1 to level 4, it indicates an increased level of efforts made for the mitigation of GHG emissions. And the level 1 represents the case of no efforts indicated by existing capacity, the same technology adopted, and no change in consumption due to behavioral change. And level 4 indicated the great efforts, which describes an increased, for example, increased renewable energy, adoption of advanced technology, and reduced unit energy service demand due to behavioral change. And as I mentioned, we also add a level 5 to indicate the possibility of physical limits as well as the technical potential, in particular for the renewable and nuclear energy. I would like to show you an example by using the web tool. Excuse me. Here. Okay, thank you. So, so this is the interface of our Japanese web tool for the low carbon navigator. The mouse doesn't work. Maybe it's I'm sorry for the inconvenience. From the interface, the user can switch from different pages in terms of energy supply, the electricity supply, and energy security, the energy flow, related cost, and share the information with your friends through different medias. If we go to the energy supply, and if we select the example pathway from the collection of the example pathways, if we select the maximum effort made from the supply side, then we can see that based upon these selections that all of the supply side we set level 4, and all of the demand side we set level 1. And now we can see that these can help us to achieve 46% of reductions compared with 1990 levels. If we go to the electricity generation, and we can see that based upon these kind of choices, actually the energy mix dependent more on the renewable energies, about 70%, and about more than 20% from nuclear energy, and very limited contributions from fossil fuels with CCS technologies. And if we go to the next page at the energy security, and this can give an analysis of the energy security in terms of the dependency on import of energy resources, as well as the diversity of the energy mix. And compared to the 2010 as the reference year, that we can see that this kind of pathway setting leave us to less dependency on imported energy, as well as give a variety of different sources of energy. If we go to the next page, the energy flow. So these also indicate the flow of energy from the energy resources, including both domestic produced as well as imports. Then go to the primary energy, the secondary energy, to the very end of the end consumers, including the residential, the commercial, manufacturing, transport, as well as agriculture sector. If we go to the cost page, because we can select as much as we want for the benefit of GHG's reduction, and we can also select the very high level of energy secured supply, but at what cost? So cost information is always very helpful for making your decisions on the choices. So if we go to the cost in context, the first one, then we can, these data show you how much this will cost you as an additional cost at per capita per year level. And the pathway, if you move the cursor to the your pathway, we can see that about 300,000 kind of Japanese yen will be the additional cost based on these choices. And compared to O level 1 setting, this will be about 40,000 Japanese yen. So these also can be provided in a more detailed way in terms of the breakdown of different costs. Can we go to the next cost? The details. The second one, sorry. Yeah, so these give you the details on how much the fuel costs you and how much the electricity costs you, as well as the sectoral choices that will cost you as additional cost. So next one, please. Next one, share. So we also want to that enable you to share this pathway and information with your friends. Thank you. Can we go back to the PPT? The last one. The last one, please. Yeah. So I would like to thank all of the Japanese experts, the UK DEX team on the 2050 calculator, the British Embassy Tokyo, as well as the Ministry of the Environment. Without your continuous and generous support, we cannot reach at this stage. And also, I would like to thank all of the hardworking team members for bringing us to show you the output of the Navigator. So join us to explore your own low-carbon pathways by using the low-carbon Navigator. So please also access to our website for downloading of these tools, and contact us and share your opinions and ideas. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zhou, for your presentation. それでは次に英国
Now, I'd like to invite Mr. Jan Ole Kiso, Senior Policy Advisor of 2050 team of UK Department of Energy and Climate Change, to talk about a 2050 Pathways Calculator, platform for energy literate debate and lessons learned.
Dr. Jan Ole Kiso, would you please to make your presentation?
Excellent. Thank you very much, and big congratulations to the Japan 2050 team. I know how much work this actually involves, so it is absolutely fantastic to see this output. And as Richard already alluded in his remarks, we continue to be amazed that this approach, which is at the end of the day an approach which we initially developed for ourselves and only for our internal purposes, is now being picked up by smart teams around the world and modified, improved, perfectionated, new analysis being added onto it, and that actually it still works then within your country context. And we very much hope as well that we will be modifying and improving our 2050 calculator next year, and we intend to learn from all of the innovations and improvements which you have done here. Just to mention 2 points, what I was fascinated by. First of all, your 5 different society scenarios. That's definitely new to us, and we have to get our head around that. Maybe that could be something for us in the UK. Then I think how you treat nuclear is fascinating, that you focus on the existing stock and then potential new builds. And then the innovations around energy security as well, I find very interesting. So big congratulations from my side. I have, I think, 10 minutes roughly during which I have a couple of slides here where I just like to indicate how we have used this tool in the UK. And this could provide you with ideas on maybe some of these concepts could work within the Japan context. However, of course, every country is different, and there are definitely many hundreds of different ways of approaching and utilizing this 2050 calculator. But here, just a couple of points how we have done it. Could we have the next slide? It's important to note that wonderful. That we in the UK have got 3 versions of the 2050 calculator. One is the Excel spreadsheet, and that is really to engage experts. So it's completely open source, and the experts can see there into how much detail or into how little detail we went into their specific sector. And if the experts actually believe that there's something wrong with it, whether there's a biomass conversion sector wrong, or whether they believe that, one expert came to us and he said he believes in nuclear ships that will be developed in the future in the UK, then that can be modified by just opening the Excel spreadsheet and then putting in your own figures and your own beliefs, and you can see how that actually impacts the whole of the UK energy system. And that has been very useful for us in, first of all, making sure that our system, our calculator actually works, but also in actually getting ownership and trust from the various experts, whether that's businesses, NGOs, or actually international partners in looking at this model. Then the web tool, which was just presented, the Japanese version, basically catapults your audience by a factor of 10, maybe even by a factor of 100. So we never managed to engage a minister with an Excel spreadsheet in our department. It might be different in your country, but we have failed on that front. We have, however, achieved to get attention of some ministers, at least, around this web tool version. And that is because it is much easier to use, it is quicker to use, and it visualizes some of the impacts. So you can visualize your energy security impacts, you can visualize your area impacts, your land use impacts, you can visualize your cost, your air pollution impacts of these various pathways. And that can be done much more powerfully in the web tool. So the development of that software was pivotal to our outreach work. Otherwise, we probably would, I probably wouldn't be standing here. We have then actually roughly, what was it, a year after we've launched the web tool version, came up with the idea together with our comms department of developing an even easier version of the calculator, and that is called My 2050. So if you go to Google and put in My 2050, you should get that. And then you here, as you are all an expert audience, you can decarbonize the United Kingdom in a matter of probably 10 to 15 minutes. And you can see there at the bottom that that is much more visually engaging. You can see my house, my city, and my countryside. And then you have not 45 different choices, but you have altogether 14 different sectors to choose from. That has been very powerful for us on actually bringing in the public, and by opening the debate around energy and emissions, this was a critical tool to achieve this. Just like the Japan team, we consisted as well of different organizations which were seconded into the Department of Energy and Climate Change during the course of the work, and that is very much the spirit of the work as well. We do not want to be seen as a government output, but we want the 2050 calculator to be seen as a platform for an energy literate debate, where everybody, although people might have different views, can actually portray their different views onto the calculator. So we, for example, have got pathways from Friends of the Earth, which is an NGO, green NGO, and it does not always agree with UK government policy. They have utilized the tool and can show their view in this tool. Also Shell, which is of course a gas and oil company, the National Grid, which is an electricity company, they have also utilized this tool. So by actually making sure that we have got a wide spectrum of views represented in this calculator, we were able to use this as a common platform. And that was quite fascinating to us, because one could actually see that in a lot of areas which we tend not to talk about, there's actually a lot of agreement. And then in some areas, for example, the everlasting debate between renewables and nuclear, there are wide differences. But actually, when it comes to the overall aim of decarbonizing the electricity grid, most stakeholders agreed. Whereas, as I mentioned, then this debate between renewables and nuclear was basically put into perspective of the larger national picture. And that was very important, to have this all-inclusive approach. We're often being asked, how did this calculator influence policy? And there's, of course, not a single analysis which is influencing policy. Policy is being influenced by all of us and by many other studies and pieces of analysis. Just to give very quickly some example, the calculator managed to focus the energy debate in the UK by mostly concentrating on the issues which actually matter. So you can find out quite quickly, for example, on the renewables side, on which renewables have got the greatest potential in the UK and which renewables do not. Wave technology was a big surprise for us. We always thought that there was great potential of wave energy in the UK, but it turned out that actually it is quite limited. Whereas then offshore wind and onshore wind are is the renewable technology which has got the greatest potential in the UK. That really helped us to focus the debate. As you've got the wide-ranging options in different technologies, for example, on nuclear, you can test a scenario in which you switch off a certain technology. So if people believe that CCS will never be developed or that nuclear should not be or should be stopped, you can then actually see that pathway automatically, and you can't just say no to something. You actually then have to, as a user, decide yourself on how you substitute that energy, or whether you actually reduce your energy demand. So it is important that the whole system is always being seen as a complete system, and you can't say no to all technologies. A big eye-opener was for us bioenergy as well. And there was an estimation before we built the calculator that basically we can produce as much bioenergy as we want, and that this can decarbonize then various sectors of the UK economy. And the calculator, by showing how much land is actually required for a certain amount of bioenergy, really managed to bring home the message that we're talking about a finite and a limited resource which we have to use very, very scarcely. And the last point is we published an overall energy and emissions strategy, which we call the Carbon Plan. It's available on our internet site as well. That was signed off by our Prime Minister, David Cameron, and the Cabinet. And that basically outlines what we believe needs to happen in the various sectors, from the demand side to the supply side. And by using the 2050 calculator, we could indicate what kind of level of actions is required going up over the next coming decades up to 2050, and then seeing, of course, whether we are on track to achieve these targets. So we believe that we now have a plan that adds up. Communication side was a really big surprise for us. Initially, we built this tool mostly for our own understanding and for our own analysis. And as I mentioned, as we built the web tool and the My 2050, that opened up a whole communications angle which we hadn't thought of beforehand. And the web tool has been used by roughly 100,000 unique visitors, and the My 2050, this gamey version, has been used by roughly 150,000 visitors. And very critically there as well, you as a user can submit your pathway to the government of the UK. So please, if you have time, go to My 2050 and submit your pathway. I promise you, we will have a look at it and analyze it. These are just some very quick final ideas on how this work can be used. And as I said, that was something which we didn't think of beforehand, but it's absolutely amazing that this has developed its own dynamic now. Our communications unit has started a whole program of what is called the British Energy Challenge, where we had on the right-hand side in the UK a prominent journalist who writes a lot about energy and climate change. And then on the left-hand side, you actually have my boss there who sits at the computer, the guy who developed the web tool, and you can see the web tool in the background. And what you can't see is that there, believe it or not, is an audience of 700 people, which was our biggest audience ever, who all paid £5 as well, to actually engage in this British Energy Challenge. And we basically did a crowdsourcing exercise, and we're asking, okay, who here in this audience believes that the UK government should be building up 30 gigawatts of solar power, which roughly equates to 5 square meters of solar power panels for each person. And then we did a quick voting exercise. The point of that was, of course, not to get one consensus pathway, but to have an energy literate debate again. And the pathways calculator indeed is regularly helping us to facilitate this energy literate debate. Because as I mentioned, otherwise people very often revert to just saying no to certain supply technologies. The other one, which was, of course, we were trying to focus some of our attention on kids as well. We are 2050 is basically, that's very much the next generation has to live with the consequences of our actions and probably has to implement a lot of what we are talking about here as well. And we had the National Geographic for Kids running a picture competition on first of all their favorite pathway, and then they should paint a picture around their favorite pathway. And here you can see hydrogen powered planes. We actually don't have that in the pathway, so I don't know where the kid got that one from. But we do have solar panels on every south-facing roof, including the House of Parliament. So you can roughly visualize what how certain scenarios would look like in the UK. Finally, from our point, we are using this now quite a lot for international engagement opportunities. And here it was already mentioned, we had the honor of the Prime Minister of Japan visiting us. And on the right-hand side is the Secretary of State of my department, Energy and Climate Change. And on the left-hand side, you can see that he's presenting the or showing the pathways calculator. We believe that this calculator assists us in convincing people that we're serious about the low carbon transition and that we have got a plan which adds up. So if we're being asked, how do you intend to achieve this 80% emissions reduction target, we've got quite a detailed overview, and we believed underpinned by policies which are outlined in the carbon plan as well, on how this can be and will be achieved. And that, we believe, has increased our credibility abroad as well. We are, of course, very happy as well that these opportunities of international engagement with teams from other countries exist as well. We find it absolutely fantastic. As I said, first of all, we want to learn from these processes as well, but we're very keen as well on two things, what the two principal aims of our international outreach work at the moment. One is that we believe that energy and emissions data should be made more public, should be made open source, and that once you actually have that, you are starting to develop, first of all, better numbers, better figures, and greater trust in the figures which are flying around in the international debate. And then secondly, what this calculator, one of the underlying principles of the calculator is that you always equate your energy with your emissions. We believe that that is the two sides of the same coin, and if you make a choice in your energy policy, that impacts your emissions, and if you make a policy on your emissions side, that impacts your energy. And we strongly believe that these two issues should always be kept together, and the calculator, in a way, eludes you to look at these things at the same time. So big congratulations again from my side. It's fantastic work, and I hope that everybody of you will be developing a pathway for Japan and send it over to the team. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kisa, for sharing with us the experience you have gained in developing and using 2050 UK 2050 Pathway Calculator. さて、それではこれからパネル
Well, now let's start the panel discussion. I ask the panelists to please come up to the front and take your seats on the podium. Since time is limited, we like to start right away our panel discussion. So, from Professor Nishioka and Dr. Zhao, we heard presentations about the low carbon navigator, and that analyzes actions toward low carbon, and it's a tool for communication amongst the stakeholders. And it's significant that, or it will be significant if many people will use it. It's easy to operate, and there are wide policy options available, and that makes it possible for a wide range of people to make use of this. So in this panel discussion, let's talk about education. Well, we have education and NGO people, and also people who are involved in research in dialogue-based policy making. So they're going to participate, and they're going to talk about how the navigator may be utilized from their perspectives and how it may be improved. So I'd like to have 2 rounds of questions. First, well, time is very limited, so let's do it efficiently. I ask for your cooperation. So in the first round, I'd like to ask each of the panelists, well, I'll introduce each panelist, and then from their perspective, I want them to talk about the most important measures that should be taken. And so we have, well, based on their comments, we're going to operate the low carbon navigator and show you the results. So first, I'd like to call upon Professor Matsushita, Senior Fellow of IGES and Professor Emeritus of Kyoto University. You're going to talk mostly about energy conservation, I believe. Please. Yes, concerning energy conservation, management of the demand side is what I'll talk about, and I'll make some selections. So in 2050, we want to reduce GHGs by 80%. That's the assumption that I will use. And for that, we need to use all policy options, especially concerning CO2. We should put a price on the CO2. That is what I would assume. And the desirable scenario or options is what I want to explore. So let's go in order. So residential energy management, number 4, or level 4. And insulation, 4. And electrification of heaters for households, 4. And energy efficiency of air conditioners, 2. And hot water supply, level 4. And energy efficiency of the hot water, number 2. And a solar heater, 2. Well, there are 2, 3, and 4. There are the same options, so it's the same as selecting 4. But for the solar water heaters, we say 2 because there's no policy. For industrial, for commercial energy, 4, insulation 4, heater, cooler 4, and per household, the energy demand for cooking, etc., 4. So same level of energy demand is the assumption there. The reason why is because on one hand there is energy efficiency, on the other hand, because of aging, there's going to be additional energy demand generated. So for household cooking, energy efficiency of cooking and lighting, and for per floor space, lighting 4, and 2 for kitchen, and for industrial energy mix 2. So in 3, CCS introduction is considered, but I think there is an issue with the CCS, so I say 2. That's all. Thank you very much. So I'd like to ask Nakajima-san.
局の関
The Assistant Manager, Urban Environment Section of Kawasaki Environmental Research Institute is talking about transport. What I chose, starting from left top, the passenger traffic volume, number 2, zero emission passenger traffic technology shift, 3, zero emission passenger transport technology, 3, biofuel mix 2, and cargo transport means 2, zero emission cargo truck technology 3, and biofuel mix ratio number 2. And I'm having high expectation on fuel cell, and so I'm more toward biofuel emissions. And Mr. Yamagishi from WWF Japan, the climate and energy group leader, and he's going to talk about renewable energy. WWF Japan, I'm from WWF Japan, I'm Yamagishi. I'm responsible for renewable energy sector. As Mr. Nishioka said, globally speaking, in the latter half of this century, we will have to reduce the emission to almost 0. That's the assumption. And we're talking about this in the context of the world, and Japan will also have to reduce the emission to almost 0. So 80% is a necessary level of reduction. Then we have to focus more on renewable energy or natural energy. And so from that perspective, all kinds of potential will have to be exhausted. And I hope that everything can be assigned 5. But so there are 3 exceptions, though. One exception is as for the fossil or thermal power. In WWF Japan, when we put together scenarios, as for biomass use, it's not just for electricity, but for heat. So rather than having biomass to the full extent, we put the thermal power 3. And as for mid to small hydropower, the numbers are not available fully, so 4 for that. And as for ocean energy, there is a high level of uncertainty. So when we put together a scenario, there's not much there, so we assign 2. If I put 5 to everything, then that would not be interesting enough. So in order to have some uncertainty change, I have made some exceptions. Thank you.
That's Professor Yagishita from Sophia University, a visiting professor, Graduate School of Global Environmental Studies. So he handles nuclear, which is a very difficult area. Thank you. 2 hours ago, I just returned to Haneda Airport. I did not have any briefing, and I was in China. And I was in the negotiations for the waste issue, and I came here without knowing what I was going to do. Now, what would the Prime Minister Abe do? What would this administration do? That is what I would like to present. So the Nuclear Regulation Authorities conducting assessment about the restart, and they're going to restart those that meet the standards, and they're going to try to get regional consensus. Based on that, they're going to have a restart of nuclear power plants. So it's a 40-year life for the power plants, but technically, if it's feasible, it will be extended. And if possible, the restarted nuclear power plants, if they can meet the technical standards, they would like to do scrap and build. I think that is the idea of the current administration. As a result, most likely 20% of power generation in Japan will probably be nuclear. I'm not saying that's what I want to do. I think that is what I imagine the Prime Minister wants to do. Thank you. So, Dr. Ashina from National Institute for Environmental Studies, Senior Researcher, Center for Social and Environmental Systems Research. So, others have made selections. And so how much reduction can we make? And toward 80%, what additional measures and policies will become necessary? If they are necessary, what needs to be done in terms of selection of social scenarios? If you can summarize these selections of the other panelists. Well, thank you. So each has made these selections, and we've entered this. And for Professor Yagishita, for the newly built, we're not so sure, so we'll give it a large figure. But with the choices, it's a 66% reduction in 2050 vis-a-vis 1990. So earlier we were saying 60 to 80%, so it's in that range. But we need some more additional measures to achieve 80%. That is what this calculation shows. So what remaining measures are available? Well, transport, still not so many red, so maybe we can step on the gas for there or accelerate the effort there, and also residential for cooking and appliances and lighting. Maybe we can have additional effort. Then the current 66% can be raised to 70 or 80%. Now on the supply side, I think there is a great effort already, so maybe difficult to improve further. But as you saw, you can't just do it on the demand side or just on the supply side. You have to have a good match between demand and supply in order to achieve 80% reduction in 2050 in Japan. That is evident from this exercise. And in terms of society, well, Professor Nishioka talked about the R&D society. That is what we're using as an example. Now, if that becomes share society, that is that resources, energy, and food, all of them are shared amongst the people, and we have less imports from abroad. If we transition to that kind of society, then we can increase the reduction to 74%. So what kind of society do we aim for has a major impact on the level of difficulty of achieving a target. In the UK version, Dr. Yan talked about maybe increasing societal scenarios, but they have one currently, and we have 5. So I think the UK has a clear vision of the societal vision in 2050. So now they're just thinking about how to move toward that vision. But in Japan, we still can't make up our minds amongst the 5 different societal models. Maybe that's what is reflected here. So the level of difficulty changes depending on the societal model that you choose.
Thank you very much. Now, let us move to this round 2. From the position of each panelist, how you can utilize this navigator and what areas of improvement that you can identify. That's what I would like you to share with us. In the pre-briefing, I asked each one to speak for 5 minutes, but there's only 15 minutes left. So in the simple math, it's only 3 minutes for each. So I apologize for that, but I hope you can help us with this time management. So, Dr. Matsushita. In the university, I have been teaching for a long time. So, as an education tool, I have looked at this navigator. And climate change or IPCC has been taken up as a topic in the classes in university. And I'm talking about how challenging this is. But then the students would feel helpless. That's the trend that I've seen. And using this tool, you can think for yourself and choose the kind of society that you'd like to see. That if this can be used for that purpose, then you can revitalize the students and let them think together. And as an assumption, you have to have a correct understanding of climate change based on IPCC report and international trends. And based on that understanding, you can go into discussions. And the point of discussions is to what views you have on scenarios and what should be you should think is the target. And the nuclear power and the renewable energy and fossil fuel, what is the optimum energy mix, and the residential side and industrial side, how you can control demand side, and based on that you can come up with policies. But in reality, as Mr. Zhou said, the way you calculate cost is that in 2050, for example, even if you get 200,000 yen, 300,000 yen per person, it doesn't mean much if the economy grows, and the part of that expanded economy will be spent on the reduction. So it doesn't necessarily mean that your standard of living will decline. And also, the fossil fuel will increase in prices, and renewable energy will decline in prices. So as time passes, you have to also keep revising in the costs involved. So that's the effort that you need. Thank you.
Ms. Nakajima from Kawasaki City. Well, earlier we heard from Dr. Yan Ole, and he talked about my city in the UK calculator. So at IGES, we're working on the navigation for the local governments where we're considering such development. So what do you think about that? In terms of how to utilize this as a local government, we have events for environmental education for citizens, and we can use this at those occasions. So increasing renewables, that people agree that that's a good thing, but how much impact is that going to have on the emissions or impact on cost? That is clearly understood if you use tools like this. So I think we can do environmental education using this kind of tool. And also, if you use a tool like this, it will not be a one-way lecture. You can have a discussion. And so I think this will be useful in that regard. Now, the local government version Navigator, you say you are considering. So perhaps not the national version, but if you have a version for each locality, I think people will feel more affinity to that kind of effort, and so that might be beneficial. Now, for the city level development, now there is a lot of statistics available at the national level, but at the large city level, there would be data that you will not be able to obtain. So how to handle the data may be an issue that needs to be overcome. And so maybe that is something that should be considered. Now, when we think about city policies, when we use this tool to consider policies at the city level, well, there are many factors and items here that we cannot directly impact. So for that, it's really not a matter of choice, but it's a policy direction set by the national government. So maybe you can modify how the choices are made. Maybe automatically set some items. And I think some cities, they have focused on certain policies, and if you can reflect that in the model, that would be good. Maybe you can have additional items or selection of societal scenarios. So maybe you can compare between if you use traditional policies and this unique policy that the city is focused on. I think that might be interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. As environmental NGO, Mr. Yamagishi is quite active, so there could be a possibility. So from your perspective or capacity, can you share your thoughts with us? Thank you. With regard to how to utilize this navigator, in Japan, probably GHG reduction target for 2030 is something that you have to achieve. And when we have discussions amongst NGOs, of course, we have to envision toward 2050. So in that discussion, we can utilize this Navigator as a fathers for thoughts for the discussion. That could be one of the ways to use this Navigator. As for the suggestions for improvements, when we received this Navigator as WWF Japan, energy scenarios until 2050 has been developed on our own. And whether we can reproduce this on the Navigator, that's what we have tried, but this failed. And what we found through this trial is the following. There are two. And firstly, what I chose is close to 5 for most of the renewable energies. But the energy supply, in terms of energy supply, is not that huge. In fuel and thermal sector, you can't play with the renewable energy too much. And so there could be more options for renewable energies in terms of heat. For example, in the heat utilization, biomass, whether this could be used more or less. And from the hydrogen that is produced from renewable energy, whether you can use that. I think if you look ahead into 2050, that could be also considered. And we are an NGO, so for example, the installment of wind power is more than what 5 says. 70 million kilowatt is the number that we see, but according to a report from Ministry of Environment, the potential is much more than this number. So the numbers shown in 5, or as for the geothermal number, what do these numbers represent? If there's more explanation behind this or rationale behind this, then that would be appreciated. In the case of wind power, some restrictions have been already taken into account in the number that is shown. So this could be more explicitly described. That's my suggestion. That was the improvements that I was able to talk within the meet.
Professor Yagishita, so you talk about the participatory survey, and so perhaps applications in that regard? Well, concerning low-carbon society, there are many issues that need to be discussed. And to visualize that and to discuss those issues, this tool could be helpful to visualize the issues. As I said, for more than 10 years, I've been researching various participatory methods, and I think a brochure has been distributed to you, and Professor Nishioka participated, and so we're talking about 2050, but the drastic GHG reduction, well, we have been conducting a stakeholder participatory conference past 3 years for the GHG reduction, and we put together a manual for stakeholder participatory meetings. So this is just for reference. Now, in Japan, concerning backcasting approach, there are people who feel very close to that, and there is another group who say forecasting is more important, and there is a dichotomy between the two. And so several points. Well, participatory meeting method should be used, and you should have a good design of the meetings, and the low carbon navigator may be utilized depending on how you design the conference. So there's a PowerPoint, and this is what I just put together in the plane. And there are various methods, and there are hybrid type meetings, and so it's comprised of 2 meetings. So in steel and energy industry, or like environmental NGO, like WWF. So they have these experts or stakeholders for those issues. So there should be a deep discussion among the stakeholders to sort out what are the issues, and probably you will not be able to come to a consensus. I think it's impossible to have a consensus amongst the stakeholders. So, but then the issues are sorted out, and then the experts are standing by, and then they look at that and they create indicators and they create scenarios. Then there are scenario choices, and then you invite citizens, arbitrarily chosen. You could do it in Kawasaki or anywhere in Japan. And under certain rule, you ask the citizens to choose a scenario. So that's the conference scenario that I have. And then the Navigator can be utilized effectively at each stage. So at the top level, each stakeholder has its own views. And so when they make that point, they can use this Navigator. And then there is the expert group. They look at the issues, and then they create access. They should not make the scenario based on their thinking. So based on the points raised, the different values should be input into several different scenarios. And then finally, from amongst many scenarios, a choice should be made. So enlightened citizens should come together. Any method can be taken, but voting can be done, and you probably won't get a majority. But what should be changed should be discussed, and then at that time again, the low carbon navigator can be put to good use. So that's the proposal that I have. The moment I wrote this, I thought maybe there should be a government budget for this, and there should be a 3-year project, and we can put together a good manual.
Thank you very much. Very valuable views and requests are expressed by each of the panelists. I'd like to ask Mr. Shina to comment on all these panelists' comments. Well, in the interest of time, there are only 2 additional comments that I'd like to make. Firstly, it's about the city-level low carbon navigator development. When you talk about the whole Japan, there have been low carbon scenarios that we've been looking at together with Dr. Nishioka, and we've been just wondering, there could be cities like this, so maybe we cannot do this in our city, but somewhere else this can be done. But at the city level, as Ms. Nakajima said, you are looking at what is in front of you, and if this doesn't go with your feeling, it doesn't go well, and so it could be more difficult when you actually put in the data. But if you go into the field, that could be more interesting. And IGES, and we are also having coordination with Kawasaki City, so it could start with Kawasaki City or a certain city. And the second point is what Mr. Yamagishi said. What is the what is it that numbers are representing? The Excel version can be downloaded from the bottom, and actually there are many descriptions about the meanings of the numbers, but this cannot be seen on the web tool. That is true. So we are now developing some description book. So we would like to put some explanation about effort level 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I hope this can be also part of that book that I was writing. But it's not just numbers, but level of difficulties to achieve. And as Mr. Yamagishi said, there are fewer items than WWF assumption. And Ms. Joe said toward the end that this is the only version 1. So the onshore wind power could be introduced more, or insulation efficiency and home electronics efficiency could be enhanced further, or it may not be that efficient. So based on the input from experts, we can update this so that we can have better 1, like version 2 or 3, we may not be able to catch up with the British version, but we are hoping to catch up as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've used up all the time allocated to us. We wanted to take questions from the floor, but I'm sorry that we've run out of time. So through this panel discussion, we were able to have a very active discussion, and Dr. Ashina made a concluding comment that there is going to be further improvement to the Navigator, and Dr. Yagishita raised the issue of where this may be utilized. So we should have a good design of various meetings where this may be utilized. So there should be good coordination between designing of meetings and the use of navigators. I think those are issues we need to continue to explore. And with that, I must close this panel discussion. I apologize for my poor moderation. But based on the comments that were made and based on the experience in the UK that Dr. Kiso explained, we like to learn more and further improve this product. And finally, I'd like to ask closing remarks from Dr. Fujita, Director, Center for Social and Environmental Systems Research, National Institute for Environmental Studies. Thank you. It's already, the closing comments already made by Dr. Ashina and the moderator, but just 2 minutes as representing the Center for Social and Environmental Systems Research. As was mentioned yesterday, at our center, we have the AIM, the Asia Pacific Integrated Model, and past 25 years we've been studying the mid to long term carbon model. And it's a very important issue to involve the citizens, to let them use this. Now, looking at this low carbon navigator and the pathways calculator, there is a great interactivity and visual interface. And we have a lot of expectation for this navigator. In the morning session was mentioned that the low carbon society has to move from the debate stage to action stage. So this is participatory tool, and you can reflect your views, and so you can avoid agreeing on principle and disagreeing on the details. And this tool can be very effective, and IGES and the British Embassy and Ministry of Environment, they are going to continue to provide continuous support, and we're going to continue to exert efforts. Now I'd like to thank the panelists, speakers, and the Professor Hamanaka, moderator, and all of you who have stayed with us the past hour and a half. And with that, end my closing remark. Thank you very much. Dr. Fujita, panelists, Professor Hamanaka, please, or thank you very much. We will now break until 3:45. And then there will be 3 parallel sessions in 3 rooms. So please move to the room that you have registered. And in this session, we'll have parallel session 5. International Climate Regime in 2020 and Initiatives in Asia, Mitigation Actions, and Measuring, Reporting, and Verification.